Greetings, Diski fam. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Sisonke Diski Chat. This is a show where we speak everything that has to do with the beautiful game. And in this month, for the next 30 days, we all know what's happening up in Qatar, where the FIFA World Cup is currently taking place. And today, we are going to be speaking to gentlemen who have actually played at the biggest sporting platform in the world, former Bafana internationals. Number one, Mr. Andre Arendse.
Thanks for having me there.
Thank you very much, sir. And right here next to me, former Bafana captain Bongani Khumalo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Cool, gonna get straight into it. I'm gonna start with you, Andre. You obviously could not go to 98. You were there in 2002. When you walk onto the pitch, knowing that the eyes of the world are watching you, what goes through your mind?
Very difficult to explain. There are so many emotions, and Bongs will tell you, it's every footballer's dream to play on the biggest stage of world football, and it doesn't get any bigger than the FIFA World Cup. And missing out on 98, obviously I picked up an injury, was an even bigger inspiration for me to want to work towards 2002, and then we're going, oh, it's 4 years away, but that's where it started for me. On recovery from that injury, it was working towards that next one, that was 2002. Stepping onto the stage eventually and for me, just stepping onto a World Cup stage is the most satisfying moment you can have as a pro footballer. It doesn't matter where in the world it is, but I'm guessing Bongani will tell us it's even more satisfying being on home soil.
Yeah, probably. I was going to get to that. 2010, the whole country, the eyes of the world. Now, attention is not only on South Africa as a playing team in the tournament. South Africa is now attention, the whole country. FNB Stadium on the 10th of June, I think it was, in 2010.
Yeah.
Those vuvuzelas blowing, and here you are walking onto the pitch. What was that like? I know Andre says it's difficult to explain. Maybe for you, it might be easier.
Yeah, as Andre said, I mean, look, just as a stage, it's incredible. It feels different. It is different. It's the highest level of the game. Obviously, you're representing your country, but I think where we were blessed, our generation, is that we played on home soil. But what that means is we get to play the opening game, which is even more important, which you have more eyes on you. I mean, I think you saw now with Qatar in the opening game, a bit of a nervy start, and the last thing you want to do is concede early. And the incredible thing is, when you look at that offside rule, where there need to be two players behind the goalkeeper, that's the exact same thing that happened to us in that game. And I remember that goal going in and thinking, oh, this is way too soon to be conceding. Like, this might be just a long game. But obviously, when it was brought back from offside, it kind of gives you that relief to be like, okay, now the nerves, put that to bed and let's start playing, because we've been given a second chance, really. And I think that's when, we started slow, and in the second half, we started playing a little bit better, and so on and so forth. And to be fair, that's exactly what the coach said at halftime. Is the first half is done. Yes, it's an opening game, it's a big stage, there's a bit of nerves, but we're still in the game. That's the most important thing. So in terms of that, it adds a different dynamic in terms of the 2010 World Cup. And just the sheer support that we had at the time was just immense. I think it was a special time for the country and everyone involved.
Andre, when you go into a World Cup game, you've obviously played at a World Cup. You've gone to an AFCON, and you've played friendlies. Do you approach those games differently, knowing the extent or how big the platform is?
You can't afford to approach at international level. You can't afford to approach those type of games differently, because they're all international games. So if you're going to say to yourself, well, it's only a friendly, my mindset is going to tell me that I don't have to work too hard, I don't have to do the things I would normally do in an official game, then that's how you carry your performance into an official game. So you don't have the time to do that. And the levels are much higher. So you have to rise to those levels the minute you set foot onto the pitch, because it's totally different. And for me, it's always helped me improve my game at a higher level. When we're growing up, we start in the amateur ranks, and then you try to prove to go to a professional rank, that type of thing. So it's that journey that takes you those steps up. And when you get to these big stages of world football, you immediately see the picture, and you immediately understand what that process was and what you needed to do to get to the big stage of football.
Looking at the 2022 World Cup, obviously it's playing at a weird time of the year. It's the first of its kind. And looking at the African teams, Bongani, I mean, you've got your Tunisia is there, you've got Senegal, they already went down in their game against Netherlands. How would you rate Africa's chance in this particular World Cup?
It's very difficult. I mean, I think one thing that needs to be mentioned is that, number one, we only have 5 countries, that participate in the World Cup, 5 African countries. And you would imagine we want more to have a better chance of possibly going all the way or having a chance of just even threatening semi-finals and the final. So it's always going to be difficult. I mean, look, when you play in a World Cup, yes, it's the best players in the world. A lot of the time, it's your European-based players that are now together in the national teams. You look at Brazil, I mean, all their players, most of their players are top players at their clubs. Yeah. And you look at our African countries, where we are now, every 4 years, how many players do we have playing at that level? And that's always the question that's asked whenever a World Cup comes about. Unfortunately, Senegal has missed a massive player in Sadio Mane. Yeah. And you can kind of see in the last game how much he was missed, because as solid as they can be and work hard and so on and so forth, but you need that quality in the final third. I mean, at the highest level of the game, you don't get many chances. And you need those players that just have that aura to cause a little bit of concern in terms of opposition defenses. I mean, if you have a player like Mane, and I'm a centre-back, you're already worried about what he might do or what he might not do. And by occupying the mentality of 2 centre-backs or 1 centre-back, it frees up someone else to maybe do something. But if you miss such a massive figure, all of a sudden it really, really puts you on the back foot. So when you gauge the chances of African teams, yes, we want them to go all the way, we want them to obviously threaten, but with all being said, the first prize for every African team is just get out the group. Once you get out the group, anything's possible.
And if you lose your first game, like obviously we're speaking now about Senegal, they've already lost their first game. We've just seen a shock with Argentina losing their first game against Saudi Arabia. How much does that put you on the back foot, knowing that pressure's on? There's now 2 games that you have to win.
It's amazing how people have mixed sort of opinions about the group stage games of a World Cup. Some might say, if you lose your first game, don't worry, you've got, then you've got the feel of the tournament and you go into your next one. I always feel that opening game is so much more important, because if you grab something out of it, it takes the pressure off a little bit. Having said that, if you don't grab anything out of it and you're thinking, well, we should have got something out of that one, now the pressure is just completely on you. And I look at, and as we speak about the African countries, I was so excited about, because of where the tournament is hosted, the chance that we've got, the hot conditions, that's an African kind of condition that we love playing in. And when I watch the Senegal game, I'm thinking, it's a game where Sadio Mane is the missing link, most definitely. I think what the Dutch did well for me was, you coming up against 2 massive centre-backs, and they've got strength in terms of the Senegalese. They utilise the width to their advantage. But when possession was turned over, there wasn't that outlet. And Sadio can be that outlet for his team. And that for me was a sort of a missing link. So that put him on the back foot. So now there's a bit of pressure. I still feel a team like Senegal have still got what it takes to challenge for a second spot, for example. And we've got to see how the rest of the African teams do.
And speaking about the rest of the African teams, I mean, when everybody speaks, it's as if Senegal are like the go-to team from an African perspective. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of faith in like a Ghana or a Tunisia to actually go all the way. Is that a feeling that you're getting, or?
Well, they're African champions, and with that said, they carry that into a massive World Cup tournament. Obviously, a lot of African hopes will be on them as champions. So that's probably the main reason. But also, I mean, the quality. To win an African Nations Cup is tough. I mean, it's tough. I mean, Andre did it back in the day. It's really, really tough to win those tournaments. So yes, Cameroon, there is some quality, there's some power. And again, with football, as you've seen today, with the Argentina-Saudi Arabia game, on the day, anything can happen. Yeah. But certainly going into this tournament on paper, based on past results, definitely is, for us as Africans, they will be the favourites.
So in terms of that list, the Cameroon, Senegal, Ghana, Morocco, Tunisia, Senegal look to be the one team that is able to advance, because their group is not that tough.
So to answer that question, straight off the bat, looking at the groups, looking at the African teams for me that qualified, I was drawn immediately to Senegal. As Bongani says, African champions, there's loads of quality in that team. You'd think they'd be the one to represent Africa and go beyond the group stages, for example. Yeah. And I've got hope for Morocco and Ghana and Tunisia and the rest of them. And I think we could see more upsets. Again, I'm excited to see what we can do as an African continent going forward.
Looking at the tournament so far, I mean, obviously the first game played on the Sunday. The quality of football, given the conditions in Qatar that a lot of people have been speaking about, thinking about past World Cups as well, are you seeing the quality there, or do you feel there's maybe a little bit of it lacking?
Look, obviously it's just a start. Everyone's just had their first game. Obviously, like Andre said, you don't want to lose your first game. Ideally, you want a positive result. So it makes sense that teams would be slightly tentative. They won't really come out the blocks right away. But again, it's a World Cup. There will be quality players. The opening game, yes, in terms of quality. I think there was a lot of it lacking. I think anyone and everyone could have seen that, yeah. which can happen. But certainly going forward, there's some massive fixtures coming up. You got Portugal, Ghana, you got Brazil and Serbia. There's still some real quality players that we still need to see, showcase their stuff and their talents. Because one thing, that's for sure, Brazil, in terms of taking the whole thing, winning the whole tournament, they're right up there as favourites, for me at least.
I was actually going to get into that, looking across the board. You've already had England making a very huge statement. But
yeah.
In past World Cups, England usually start like that, but things never really go their way. Who are you eyeing? I want to start with you, Andre. Who are you eyeing as if like, okay, these guys could be going the entire way?
Yeah, I'm going to give you that answer, and I'm going to break it down a little bit, because I think it's important that we've got to take everything around this World Cup and put it into the mix. So for me, I look at the quality of the team, and I'm going to go straight and say Brazil is the one that's catching my eye. Why Brazil? When I look at the mix of player they've got, their understanding of the South American conditions, as opposed to their understanding with European opposition, for example, a host of players. First and foremost, when you've got the two best goalkeepers in the world in your squad to choose from, you've got a great headache for any coach. There will be one or two question marks about their defence. There's a bit of an aging defence here, because if players like Dani Alves play and those players, there's aging legs there. So that would be a concern. I'm looking further up the pitch. And I think that this is going to be a World Cup that is going to be won by strike forces. Yeah. Because that's going to be the ultimate test for defensive units across the entire World Cup. When you look at that mix, Neymar, Vinicius Jr., for example, Gabriel Jesus, those ones, Richarlison, and they're all playing at some of the biggest clubs in Europe. Now, Tite can choose any of those as a strike force, whether it's a three up front or he's going with a front two, for example, perhaps with a 9 and a 10 around him. Those are the kinds of things I'm looking at. They've got that all in the mix, and I feel that if Brazil can take that, and this is where the World Cup for me is going to be won and lost, is the coaching staff. How they navigate their training sessions, the timing of their training sessions, as opposed to weather conditions, what kind of rest they give the players in between, how they rotate their squads, in terms of the quality they have. And I think for me, Brazil will be the one that comes closest to all of those.
In terms of, you mentioned that how the coaching is supposed to be almost like broken down. Do you feel the teams that are in Qatar for the World Cup, obviously the 32 teams outside of Qatar and maybe Saudi Arabia, did they have enough time to acclimatize themselves with the place that they are going to, given that obviously this is not a normal World Cup and the place is not necessarily a normal place in inverted commas?
Yeah, probably not, because when you look at Europe, it's pretty much winter. So you come from a colder climate and you're used to, you breathe different, especially at sea level as well. So to come straight from that into Qatar, where it's a bit warmer, it's humid, it can be quite challenging. But then again, we've all mentioned, how this World Cup has been so different, how, the dynamics have changed. And I believe that will influence, hopefully shock results like we've seen today versus Argentina. And that creates an exciting platform for the viewer at home and for everyone interested in the World Cup. So it has an effect, but as pros, I mean, as professionals, the one thing you're taught to do is to adapt as soon as you can, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
As soon as you land within the country, it's your comfort, wherever you're based, your hotel, you make sure that you have everything that you need. And when you go out on the pitch, the weather, I mean, look, Andre mentioned getting to that level. Getting to that level, you would have played in all different kinds of conditions.
Yeah.
So now it's literally just a mental aspect of not letting it get to you and finding a way to play at your best with whatever challenges are posed on the day, whether it be, whether it be the pitch or whether it be the humidity, the heat. There's so many factors that can affect a game. Sometimes, I mean, we've had careers. We're both done with our careers, and I can tell you the amount of times where you've played feeling 100% is you can probably count on one hand. There's always something. There's always a niggle, an injury, or something that throws you off, and it's so important for you to have that mentality of just getting onto the pitch and just making sure you win the game. That's it. The only thing you focus on is winning the game. All the conditions and the challenges will be there, but the best players in the world adapt to these conditions, and that's why we celebrate them.
And the biggest challenge that all of these teams would have had is that they would not have had the time to acclimatise. Remember, a week before the World Cup kicked off, a lot of these players were still playing for their clubs.
Yes.
So it literally was a matter of days for them to get there, get settled in, and start training and preparing for the World Cup.
Okay, Bongani, you never got to tell me who you eyeing to the time.
Yes, come on, let's hear
Wait,
this.
was really taking my first choice, and he summed it up perfectly. Andre summed it up perfectly. But if I were to go with a second choice, I would have said Argentina before today, but I mean, look what's happened now.
Interestingly enough, in 2010, the team that went on to win the tournament actually lost their first game.
The first game, 100%. Yeah, that's true. So they're not out of it. But yeah, you know what? I can still go with Argentina based on that fact. Thank you for that reminder. But again, look, France are defending champions. I think there's always a bit of a, call it a hoodoo, or we want to call it that, for defending champions leading into a World Cup.
Yeah.
They've always sort of struggled in the next World Cup. But for France, yes, they've lost some big players, some big names, influential sort of, voices within the change room, but there's still so much quality in that team, and they will be threatening. And I'm sure they'll find a way to play without those players that are missing. I mean, Benzema's he's been incredible as a Ballon d'Or winner.
Yeah.
And yes, they won the World Cup without him, and I'm sure they can do it again. Giroud is a couple of goals away from being the all-time goal scorer for France. Obviously leapfrogging Thierry Henry. So there's so many incentives in there for that team. N'Golo Kante is a massive miss. I mean, I think everyone sees his work rate. I don't think he's celebrated as much as he should be because his position isn't exactly glamorous, but he frees up so many players going forward purely because of his hard rate and just his intelligence on the ball and obviously off the ball, which is obviously his strength. So with all that said, let's see France. Let's see how far France can go in this tournament.
Andre, who do you think is going to be the best goalkeeper? You already mentioned Anderson and the two Brazil goalkeepers, but who else is almost like, I think he's going to do pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about the two best goalkeepers, so if either one of them plays, and I'm guessing that Alisson will be the number one choice in the team right now, barring injury. Either of those two, I think will be there at the end with their performances. Because I think whoever plays between the two of them are going to be busy because, like I said, they're playing behind the defence that is aging. And if Tite goes with a younger defence, there's a lack of experience. So they're going to need lots of guidance. So, either of those two, I think, certainly will be. And I mean, you got to look at your goalkeepers. I mean, Manuel Neuer, if he's fit and playing, very, very experienced. Always been big for Germany. I think goalkeepers, by the end of the tournaments, would have played such a big part and I don't just say that in how far the teams go, because you want your goalkeeper to be worth a clean sheet or two in the World Cup. It's very, very important because it takes the pressure off. Even if you don't win the game, you're not losing the game. So that's going to be important, and I think I'm hoping to see a new light shining from a goalkeeping perspective, whoever that may come from. I still think Edouard Mendy's got a lot to prove. He didn't have the best of starts in the Senegal game now. But I think his quality does shine through, and I think he will play a big role for his team, depending on how far they progress through the tournament.
For you, Bongani, the player to watch out for in this World Cup. I mean, the Neymars will be mentioned, the Messi will be mentioned, the Ronaldos will be mentioned, but there's obviously that player outside of those normal names that you say, okay, cool. Yeah, I think you're going to do pretty well.
It's hard to pick out, it's hard to pick up sort of like a random name out of a hat, because I just believe, with every World Cup, I've always, since I was a kid, to be honest, I've always looked at, the next shining star, whoever that may be. I've always seen, every season I've come into, even as a player, or before I was a player, I'd always wonder, like, I wonder who the next superstar will be, like in the next PSL season, or English Premier League, or so on and so forth. So, with the games being played as yet, everyone's on the same playing leveled field, and it's up to whoever's there, with the right moment, with the right quality. When the tournament's done, people will sing your praises and will know who you are. Yeah. And that's the beauty of the World Cup. It can literally change your life. I mean, it changed my life, to be honest. So that's what I look forward to. It's very, very hard for me to sit here and pick certain names that, I would have seen at club level, young players. And I feel like it almost puts pressure on them. But it's just such an opportunity for anyone and everyone to just put their hand up and show what they can do in front of the whole world.
And when you're playing at that World Cup level, you were mentioning it now, Andre, about Mendy, that he never really got it right in the first game. Mistakes, they do happen. How much do they throw you off at that level?
Yeah, well, I'm a product of that, and I just got to go back to 2002 against Spain, and that was a massive mistake in that game, which allowed Raul to score. It threw me off, but I couldn't afford to let it throw me off for the rest of the game, because it was still quite early in the game. I needed to get myself back in the game. It was a horrible feeling. You feel like you just want to dig up the ground and crawl inside because you let people down and that type of thing. And yes, it's not on purpose, but those things happen. And the biggest challenge at that level is to put it behind you, put it aside, and focus on the job at hand. And we've all been there, but it's important because it's a big stage and it can actually swallow you if you allow it to consume you. It's out the way, get on with it, and that's the most important, because you've got your teammates that you are accountable to as well for the rest of the game, the rest of the tournament, for example.
All right, you lean towards Brazil, right? And France as your second choice. Andre also leaned towards Brazil. Yeah. You didn't have a second choice.
No. So it could be one of, and we've got to, I suppose we'd need to get through an entire first round of games. Yeah. Just to give everybody an opportunity to assess, to analyze, to go, hey, not bad. This one I'm not so sure. But going into the tournament, I've had them as my dark horses before and they've let me down. Belgium for me. I just feel like they've got to come good. And they've got to do it soon, because they've got a crop of aging players, and they've got to get over that hurdle now. And this is a perfect World Cup. I think this World Cup is open to a lot of contenders, and I'd like to see Belgium be one of them. But it's not going to be easy for them. But I'm still going to go with them as a dark horse for me.
Okay, cool. Just before we wrap it up, quick one for both Bongani and Andre. What wins you a World Cup, defense or your attack?
So a World Cup is a little bit like a league, and Bongs might have a different view. A World Cup for me is a little bit like a league championship. It's not one game, and we've had a famous coach who's always said to us, defenses, your strikers will win games, but defenses will win your titles. So that's what I'm going to stick with.
Okay. For you, Bongs?
Well, he's my old teammate and my senior, and I won trophies thanks to him and with him. So I was going to say the exact same thing, as it were. But again, yes, look, it's important to have a solid defense. I think that gives you a good foundation. But just your shape as a team, your defensive shape is so important with these tournaments. Because tournament football, we wait 4 years, but the one thing, like Carlos Alberto Pereira said, was, the World Cup goes like this. So it goes quick, but also if you go all the way, it can also be quite long. So as a team, you need to be very, very switched on, very, very concentrated, and like Andre said, man, defenses win you trophies. And it's up to the strikers to make sure that they put away their chances, and that brings happiness to everybody.
Gentlemen, it's been such a pleasure having you right here on the Sisonke Diski Chat, Mr. Andre Arendse.
Always a pleasure chatting football, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Bongani Khumalo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, that has been the Sisonke Diski Chat with Mr. Bongani Khumalo and Andre Arendse, former Bafana players. And yeah, Andre believes in Brazil. Bongani believes in Brazil. I believe in Argentina. You can give us a comment on the comment section and tell us who you think is going to win the 2022 FIFA World Cup out in Qatar. Until we meet again, I'll see you on the flip side.